Welcome, Jen Marr, to the Empathy Edge podcast. We have been circling around each other's orbits, I think, for a few years. And I shared with you that for a while, I thought you were a different Jen,
There's a
which
lot of
is
Jens out there.
what happens with social media. But welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here, excited about this conversation.
I am so excited to talk to you about helping leaders own their awkward. And that
Yep.
includes their awkwardness around their emotional intelligence as well and their ability to connect with people. We're not all skilled at being able to connect with people emotionally and connect with people from a care perspective. So this is going to be great. We're going to dive in and we're going to talk about your books, including your newest one, which is Lifting Up: The Transformative Power of Supportive Leadership. But before we get into all of that, can you share with us how you even got into this leadership work?
Yeah, no, for sure. This is not a path I had planned out to do. My background is business development, international business development, actually. And as I was raising three daughters, I had to take a career break because I couldn't keep up the travel.
Yeah.
Ended up being very close to the Sandy Hook Elementary shooting tragedy, and
Oh,
where I was asked to come and help support that school. And 4 months later was a half mile away from the finish line of the Boston Marathon when the bombs went off. And it put me on this deep dive into human suffering. And with my business development mind, I saw how we were really woefully inadequate as humans responding to people going through hardship. And I just started every week at Sandy Hook asking, what more do we need to do? Immediately really zeroed in on this area that I'll call the awkward zone. That in that setting, everybody had empathy and compassion. Absolutely everybody did.
hmm.
People just acted on it wrong. They weren't, there were all these human behaviors that over the course of the last decade, I've been able to study and zero in on what is that gap between people have incredibly good intentions, but the impact it just always misses the mark.
Hmm.
And so over the last 12 years, that's what I've done. I've just dove into working with different researchers, have done research studies with the New York Office of Mental Health, worked with some great, amazing researchers from Northeastern University, now working with the Harvard Flourishing Program to really zero in on what are specific skills we can do to make sure that those emotions of empathy and compassion are acted on correctly, or even
Hmm.
in the research studies we've done, taken people with full on apathy and giving them the skills to do that cultivate the emotions of empathy and compassion.
Wow, that is a lot. And I don't think I knew that about your background. As someone myself who's very committed to ending gun violence and very supportive of Sandy Hook Promise,
Hmm.
it's really interesting to hear you talk about diving into one of the most uncomfortable and awkward
Hmm.
situations, right? So often when those types of tragedies occur, we can have empathy, but it's almost beyond. It's like we can't even fathom what those people are going through and what that community is going through unless we've, sadly gone through it ourselves. But what you're saying is so important. This idea that I talk about empathy as innate to human beings. Science has shown us that barring certain psychopathies, empathy is innate to us as humans, but what happens is that muscle atrophies for certain people if they're in environments where it's not modeled or rewarded or celebrated. And then you put these people with varying levels of empathy muscle strength in the same place at the same time, whether it's tragically in a community or even just at work, and just the combustion that happens and the misunderstanding of people thinking they know what empathy is when they don't. And that's, a lot of my work, but I want to raise us up for a little bit and just talk about this whole trend of empathy in the workplace, caring in the workplace. I know when I started researching my book down back in 2016, people didn't get it. And then the pandemic happened and people started to understand like, oh, we're human beings at work, right? So there's a lot of trends going on in the workplace, but what are fundamentally what's from your vantage point, what's changing in the workplace that we're even having these conversations now? We're having conversations about caring and mental health and all the things. And what do you think is driving that transformation?
Yeah, I see three major trends coming together and shifting the way work used to be is you would go in, you would get your paycheck, and you would go home. You
Hmm.
would go home to a supportive environment, a supportive community. And so work really was work and school really was school. And you could have workplaces where the leaders would say things like, leave your personal life at the door, go to HR if you're having issues. And that is the way many of us were raised under that type of the workplace model.
Hmm.
And that is all broken down now. And especially with three big shifts I see coming in, one would be the insanely fast adaptation to technology with AI, leaving hugely uncertain ways of knowing how to communicate, knowing how to connect, knowing what is your job security, all these things so fast, so quick. And it's resulting in enormous amounts of information throwing at us, but yet really poor interpersonal communication that people are being talked at, but not talked with. And so that is number one. Number two, I would say, is the generational differences coming in. So many, many changes in generational differences, a lot of which were also born out of technology. We can look at those generations as native analogs and native digitals, and just those differences just create cascading changes in the workplace. And the third area is just our world events.
Hmm.
And every day is a new world event. Again, you can kind of even look at this as technology because it didn't used to be. The human body is not meant to be able to process everybody's problems in every part of the world. And there's constant division and events and a lot of fear.
Hmm.
So, with those three things coming together in the workplace, we need to relook at what is an organization's moral responsibility to their
Right.
workforce. And then also, what is a leader's role in that? And the old way of just go to HR with any of your personal issues, it doesn't work anymore. And a
Yeah.
leader has that role to be
Right.
that guide through hardship.
So many things in there,
Mhm.
obviously. And I think you've hit the nail on the head with a lot of these trends that are driving culture change. And, what I wrote about in the first empathy book, The Empathy Edge, was that these changes were already happening. This trend was already happening. It just got massively accelerated through the pandemic because we were forced to, right? But this conversation about demanding more respect at work, seeing the whole person, all of these things, demanding work life integration was all happening. It's happening at a pace so fast that I actually have empathy for the leaders who are like, wait, what? Like, what, how am I supposed to lead now? I was told to lead this way, and now I'm being told to lead that way. And it's almost like we're pulling the rug out from under them, but for very good reasons, right? So I
Mhm.
have a lot of empathy for them too. And this is where I really believe like what's going to get us through this change, as true for any change, is
Mhm.
a growth mindset. We've
Mhm.
got to be able to willingly say we don't have all the answers, we don't know, and put our ego aside to say I've got to learn a new model because this old model is not working for me anymore.
Mhm.
So I love what you're talking about here. And then, the idea of AI and kind of I feel like the point you made about a fast adaptation of AI and also this desire to kind of throw people issues on HR just has to do with this whole desire to outsource empathy and compassion to other things in the organization, whether it's to AI or whether it's to HR. And so, how do you help redefine the role of a leader? Because you and I are out there talking about like, yeah, you got to change, you've got to adapt. Like, I'm sorry, but not sorry. So, how do you define the changing role of a leader? What should we expect from a leader, and what should leaders expect to deliver now that was not true before?
Mm. Yeah, it's such a good question. And I think what I want to do is take it a level up because I think leaders aren't even going to have the desire to change if they don't understand the shifting narrative of the employee. And whenever we work with the organization, we go in and we do pre-surveys. So we really kind of dive underneath the engagement surveys that are done. with the HR department, and really to understand what is the culture, the temperature read. And over the last 8 years, what we found is what we'll call the 580%, right? That just is human behaviors that are happening in the workplace right now. And that is anywhere between 80 to 85, sometimes up to 100% in certain industries. People will say, I can tell when people are struggling, really pointing at, like you said, your innate ability to have empathy and compassion. But yet, when we talk to employees then and say, where do you feel least cared for and supported in an organization? It will come back and at least 80% no one gets what I'm going through. So I can
Right.
see you, but no one sees me.
Mm.
And then we ask them, well, do you share your hardships at work? 80% no. So up until this point, you still could have that old model leader leave it at the door. But we
Hmm.
ask them, do you wish you could? And always over 80%, I wish I could be more open with others, but I don't feel that I can.
Right.
And then that last 80%, I have no idea how to navigate this space. I
Hmm.
don't know the boundaries. So we move from that into what we would call the barbell.
Hmm.
That is, how do we look at wellness as in general for the workforce and for our organizations? And, the two heavy ends of the barbell, I believe, have been very much built up over the last couple decades, which is excellent. The right side of the barbell, let's just say clinical care. So
Hmm.
that is your clinicians, your counselors, things like that. Through your EAP, mental health resources. That's not what a leader's job is. So
Right.
that's one side of the barbell. The other side is what we would call self-care and what we
Hmm.
would call the individual's understanding of EQ, like you might say, it's what we would call inner work, right?
Hmm.
Understanding my emotions, understanding how to take care of my body, take care of my mind. And when we are looking inward, it pretty much is on us. So these two ends of the barbell, if left alone, the barbell stays on the floor, but the barbell has a hand. And so that's supportive care. I differentiate very much between looking inward and understanding your emotions and understanding the skills to act outward to other people.
Hmm.
The hand of the barbell would be those outward facing supportive skills that someone needs. Otherwise, it's all on the employee. Okay, I've got to understand my emotions. I have to hire a coach. I have to hire a therapist. I've got to pay for all those things. I've got to do it on my own time. And guess what? The organization gets off scot-free.
Hmm.
And not only that, but it's our moral responsibility to help people through hardship. So the role of a leader then has to say, if I can't help my employees through hardship, I'm not going to have a productive team. I'm not going to have a cohesive team. I'm not going to have a team that stays together.
Hmm.
So, in a nutshell, then, number one, understanding what's happening in our organizations, also from an employee's perspective of how they feel cared for and supported, number one.
Hmm.
Two, what are the boundaries then that a leader has? And then number three, we can dive into that awkward zone as to what is holding you back from
Right.
all of those difficult conversations you need to have.
Right. Right. Well, it's funny because with the latest book, The Empathy Dilemma, I wrote about the 5 pillars to help you be an effective and an empathetic leader at the same time. And the first two are self-awareness and self-care because we have to get our own house in order to do exactly what you're saying.
Right.
Now how can I make space and be grounded enough that I can help someone else or I can even see what someone else is going through?
Hmm.
And the interesting shift that we're seeing is leaders still clinging to like that's not my role. My role
Yeah.
here is to get the job done, increase productivity, get results, drive growth. And that's why, folks like you, folks like me are out here also talking about the ROI of
Mm.
being an empathetic leader because it does drive bottom line results. And it's funny because you mentioned, it's our moral imperative to help people. And that was actually what got me down the train of this was that
Yeah.
I saw that the moral imperative wasn't enough for some people. So I was like, okay, we're going to speak their language.
Right.
We're going to talk about data. We're going to talk about research. We're going to talk about bottom line results. And now I think that's more of a conversation than it was before, where
Mm.
people actually, I think the most recent 2025 State of Workplace Empathy report said something to the effect of, and I might be quoting the stat wrong, 83% of CEOs see a link between financial performance and empathy.
Mm.
It still doesn't mean they're good at it within their organization. There's still a
Right.
huge gap, like you were talking about, but I don't think that's a finding we would have seen like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when it was like, no, that's
Right.
not my job. My job's over here in this little box. But I think a lot of that had to do with us forgetting that these assets were human
Mhm.
beings. And
Right.
I'm using air quotes for people that can't see
Yeah.
me, but um, so I think that's, I mean, do you see, I guess I'm getting to a question here is, do you see an awakening and an acknowledgement of the fact that,
Yeah.
we as humans are not capital expenditures that you can just, capital assets that you can just burn out and replace, but that we're really investing time and energy? Have you seen that shift with a lot of leaders that you're working with?
I think slowly, slowly.
Yeah.
And the
Cautiously optimistic.
ROI,
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's throwing the data out there. I
Yeah.
mean, there is so much data on the ROI of this work, right? I
Hmm.
don't think there's any shortage of data, and I think people recognize it. I think what it boils down to is just timing.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I think it's going to get worse until it gets better. However, there are some people, the people that are into this work right now are really either on the front end of the curve, they're the trendsetters, they see it, they get it, or they're the back end of the curve that literally they have to have this work done or they're gonna,
Hmm.
their team's falling apart.
Mm.
So somewhere in the middle, and also, working with a lot of college campuses that they understand students really need this work. Uh,
Hmm.
and so I think it'll get there. I mean, one of the stats that I love to share, the two stats I love to share is one is the UKG study where to 70% of workers, their boss has the biggest impact on their mental
Yeah.
health, equal to their partner. I think you know that one. And the other one that I love is the Oxford study that came out earlier this year, I think. Pretty sure it was January, maybe January 2024, where they surveyed like 46,000 workers in 233 organizations and said, if you just do self initiated acts of interventions, does it enhance well-being? So these are things like if basically giving it to the employee to take care of. You understand your EQ. You go do stress management. You go do resilience training, and we as an organization are scot-free. If it's all individual-led interventions, there is zero evidence of an improvement in well-being. Like it's a massive study, and so if we are going to keep our organizations healthy,
Hmm.
the consensus was it's Dr. Fleming out of Oxford that it has to be the organization and
Yeah.
not the worker. So I
Right.
think as these things come out, um, ultimately we just have to stay the course, and someday it will be mainstream.
Right.
I think we're going to look back on this time kind of how we looked at the fast food industry, like, wow, we had no idea what kind of junk we were putting in our bodies. And same with this. We have
Yeah.
no idea the kind of diet that screens and isolation and disconnection are having on our social health.
Yeah.
So we just stay the course, Maria. We'll get there
Well,
at some
stay the
point.
course. I'll stay the course with you. That is just fascinating because I mean, that's the thing. It's about you can't just hire your way to a caring culture or an empathetic culture because it's just like putting healthy seeds in bad soil. Like
Right.
if the environment of what the organization and what the leader is providing doesn't foster it, doesn't nourish it, doesn't encourage it, then that's what people see is they see, oh, that's not how I find success here. How I
Mhm.
find success here is this other way, no matter what the poster on the wall says about our values and our mission and our vision, right? So I think that's such an important point that it's about how do we make this actionable for people and how do we help them operationalize empathy in ways that are both sort of emotional, affective empathy, but also cognitive empathy. How are we enabling our leaders and our people to just see things from another perspective, from another person's point of view, and be willing to do that? Like that right there is the first step to
Mhm.
empathy, right? So I want to talk about this because you mentioned this earlier about, and we talked about how awkward it can be. And we're acknowledging that, right? This isn't easy work. It doesn't come naturally for some people, but they are going to need to upskill. So, how do you define the awkward zone and help leaders navigate through that when they're like, oh, this is all a little touchy feely for me? I'm going to feel fake if I ask people how their weekend was, whatever other excuses they're making. What is that awkward zone?
Well, the awkward zone is that gap between our intent and our impact, right? And within
Hmm.
that is a whole bunch of series of different habits, mindsets, and behaviors that get in our way. And so, it's a great little four square. Everybody loves a little four square. And the top two squares would be emotional barriers that they just stay in our heads. And the bottom two squares are when we're actually in front of people and we get our in-person responding behaviors wrong. And in all four of these boxes, people will walk away saying they have no clue what I'm dealing with, right? Like they don't get me. So it's closing that gap between I can see people when they struggle, but no one sees me, right?
Right.
So the top two, if you know of someone that's dealing with something, you've got someone on your team with a bad project or this or that, and you've not reached out to them yet, they have no idea you're even thinking about them. These are what we would call emotional barriers. You will either be very doubtful, driven by fear, like, "Ah, I don't think I should bring it up. It's not the right time. I might just make it worse. I'm not sure, la la la." That is, you're caring, but you're fearful that you're just not gonna, it's not, I'm not the right person. It's not the right time. I shouldn't be doing that. So that would be the doubter.
Hmm.
Um, or in our workplace, we have a lot of deflecting. The deflector is like water off a duck. Like, I don't have time for that. That's not my role. That can go to HR. I got my own problems. I can't take that on.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those two buckets. And so there are absolute skills that can be applied to either of those buckets to help people understand deflecting. All right, if I'm deflecting, this is what I should do.
Mm.
So on the bottom two, uh, those are barriers. We're together, walking down the hall, in the elevator, in the parking lot, whatever. The person walks away saying they have no idea. This person will have either been a fixer and tried to overdo it, jumping in, do this, go there,
Advice giver. Yeah. Hmm.
um, without really allowing that person to share. Or you will have just completely avoided it face to face. I see you, Maria, but I'm not going to bring that up. We're going to just talk about things. And you completely avoided it. So, in a nutshell, the four squares are either underthinking or overthinking, or underdoing or overdoing. And so we develop a language to that can be assessed. We have an awkward zone assessment. We also, with that, is a time audit, and also always just helping people to understand what stops me, what can I say, what can I do, how should I look at my time. And
Hmm.
so in that, we help people through that. But there are specific skills associated with whatever that is. And also to help people understand that we're all going to fall into all these buckets. There should be no shame in it.
Hmm.
And just like you said before, like you're going to fall into different buckets on different days, depending on your season in life, depending on your relationship with this person. And that's why it's just, yeah, I'm going to be a deflector sometimes. I'm going to be an avoider sometimes. It's just who we are. So
Hmm.
if we can normalize this language, I think
Hmm.
there's just, it's one of those situations where we don't talk about it enough.
Yeah.
And if we have these concrete, actionable skills, it's with the research that we've done. It's all based on verbs, not nouns. It's all based on actions, not emotions. And so I think if we can give the actions, we cultivate the emotions, which is really what
Yeah.
my goal is to get
I
people to cultivate empathy when they're maybe not even thinking about it.
It's so true. And I just love all of this because you're absolutely right. It depends on, and this is why, self-care is a pillar in my framework, because if our capacity is low, we can't make that space. We're in self-preservation mode. We can't take on another person's stuff or even show interest because we're like, oh, I don't have time for this. I don't know
Right.
where this conversation's going to go, right? And so I think that part is so important, and also about helping them understand that it's not, like you said, it's about verbs, it's about actions. It's not always about the feeling. And this is where, cognitive empathy can be a really valuable access point for certain people that are maybe more left brain or more analytical. They can practice things and practice habits that get them to, what we all want the outcome of empathy to be is compassion, which is empathy in action. And so if we can get there through our head, we might be able to bring our heart along too, but we can still
Yeah.
get there. So, you mentioned something that was really interesting to me in terms of your work with leaders, and that is helping them do time tracking.
Hmm.
Because I do see that a big excuse to the supportive workplace leader is there's not enough time. There's not
Mhm.
enough time. And I get it. People are overwhelmed and they're overworked. So can you talk a little bit more about the concept of time tracking and how people find time to
Yeah.
be a more supportive leader?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think also, back to the self-care and being a leader, a lot of times we feel like if I don't take care of myself, I can't help others. But in all the work I've done over the years, there's a lot of people that just can't take the initiative themselves and they need leaders to lean in. Like, don't make me lean out. I need someone to lean in. And so sometimes, even if I am completely depleted, I need to know as a leader, if I help that person, it's going to re-energize me and it's going to bring us more into equilibrium. And so I think sometimes there's a really important balance we have to make between understanding, yes, sometimes I need to care for myself first, but almost always people are in need of connection. And a lot of times, if we're focusing too much on ourselves, it's taking us down this isolation and this awkwardness that becomes harder to be around people. So I'll just go
Hmm.
there, but both
I
are
love
needed.
that.
The whole barbell is needed. So don't get me wrong on that.
Hmm.
And so with the timing, really what we focus on, how are you spending your time all during the day on things that are not work related, especially on things that weren't even around 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So what happens right now, Maria, on technology is we get so stressed, and I think you can relate to this. We have Zoom fatigue and we have information thrown at us, and it's Slack and it's email and it's texts and it's this and it's that. We go to our phones and we've got six notifications on. And what we'll do for relief is it's just like, oh, I'm just going to go play my Sudoku game. I got to get my mind off everything. Or let me scroll my LinkedIn feed. And what we're actually doing is we're going for the quick dopamine hit instead of the relational oxytocin. And the quick dopamine hit is taking us down farther and farther of isolation. And so, what we have to help leaders understand is you have a lot of these hours that you actually, you know, don't look at your LinkedIn feed. And here's the data. The data is most people, this is not even work related. These are things that weren't even around, whether it's gaming or, Netflix and all these things. And don't forget, like all of these things we're doing by ourselves now, where even the TV used to be a group sport, right?
Hmm.
And so most adults will have somewhere between 35 and 40 hours of screen time in those areas. And when we ask them how much time they could give up, people know I'm spending too much time scrolling. I shouldn't be doing that. I get a notification of the news and I go read the story and it scares me and I get stressed, right? All of those things are not necessary. And so, if most people will say they can give up 12 hours a week, 12 hours a week, and not only that, their mental health is better when they're not so scared about a new news story coming out. So, we tell them to, pull the notifications away and just take 5 minutes a day to touch base with your key people and do this and do that. Like it's a lot of
Hmm.
little things that build up that trust.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what we dive into with the time audit.
I love this because I often have said when I'm doing talks about, people saying, well, it takes too long. And I'm like, well, first of all, that's like saying I don't want to work on strategy because it takes too long. I'm just going to jump straight to tactics,
So
right?
true.
But it's also about, well, then you need to look at where you're spending your time because this is the stuff of leadership. And
Mhm.
if you don't have enough time to do that, you need to look at where you are spending your time and prioritizing your time. And I love the fact that you're calling us out on really, are you spending your time on the most productive things, or would it be more productive to put the phone down and have some conversations with the people on your team?
Right.
Because that's your role. That's what
Right. Well,
leadership is
and it's
about.
it's all about health too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the quick dopamine hits are hurting us.
Mm-hmm.
They're hurting us.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody will say, if you start having more conversations, there's so much research out there
Yeah.
about when I reach out to you, that
Yeah.
not only makes you feel better, it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
And that oxytocin is what overpowers cortisol, our stress hormone. Dopamine
Mm-hmm.
won't do that. It
Mm-hmm.
almost adds to it in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we want to get over exhaustion and burnout, we have to recognize that that's going to be a key to do it.
I love that because it's funny because that's personally been my instinct in, the last year is when I'm sort of getting down or I'm getting depleted, I'm like, let me reach out to somebody. Let me
Mhm.
text a friend. Let me call a friend. Let me see what's going on for them and get the focus off of my little pity party I'm having for myself. Now, I do want to say not everybody's, issues are just little pity parties. They're serious
Sure.
and they should be taken seriously, but I for myself have noticed that when I do reach out, it sort of gets me out of my own little hole
Yeah,
a little bit more because
100%.
then you like you said you get energized by the connection.
Mhm.
I love that. I love that.
And all of those, they're all deposits in the relational bank account. And when our
Mhm.
relationships are strong, our productivity is strong, our teams are strong, our health is better.
Mhm.
We're just gotten a little off track, that we can work on getting back.
I have kind of like a off track question, but not really. It's related to what we're talking about here, but it's kind of a big question. Do you have a perspective on when all of this technology and stimulus on us is going to come to a head?
Mm.
Are we ever going to get to a point where it's like we're going back? We're getting rid of the smartphones. We're going like, do you even ever think about what might be that, flashpoint for us?
I heard a really good podcast last week. I don't know if you ever listened to Guy Raz and How I Built That, and he had on Justin McLeod, I don't know, the CEO of Hinge,
Hmm.
and his whole thing is talking about he started this off saying we're an app we want people to delete. We
Yeah.
help people get together and date, but then we want to be off screens. And he was talking about how 70% or 80% of interactions that we used to have together with friends has been moved to a screen.
Mm.
And it's it's alarming actually. And he was asked that question. And he said, I don't think we can ever go back.
Mm.
But he's the one that said what I referenced earlier. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a health revolution, whether it's the same as the gym craze or, the health food. We now know how bad health food is for us. And I think it's starting. People are going to recognize that screen time has to be limited, that being together with people is really needed. And I think there's going to be some point where AI is going to take up a lot of this frustrating time right now. And we're going to be pushed into needing to be more human again because AI is going to do all the drudgery work and
Exactly.
hopefully free us up. So these human skills that we're going to need to redevelop to bring back to the forefront to be able to be more innovative and collaborative and being together, we're just going to have to really pull people out of it, and help them understand why it's needed and how it's needed. And especially these native digitals that have such social anxiety that they won't even go to a bank teller or won't go up to a counter. Everything has to
Hmm.
be done on a screen because it's just so socially awkward.
Hmm.
We're going to have to really help to pull them out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I have an 11-year-old, so 11-year-old boy, and it's challenging. And I have often said that too about AI, like empathy and those social skills, that emotional intelligence is going to be more marketable and necessary than ever because the leaders hiding behind the drudgery right now to prove their value will have nowhere to hide. When when AI starts
Right.
automating all that, the only thing it's going to be left for leaders to
Mhm.
show their value is how they're motivating the team, connecting with the team,
Mhm.
listening and respecting and innovating with the team, not with more stuff they can do on their laptop.
I had a really good example of this yesterday. I was flying back home after a weekend away, and it was terrible storms. And I was in an airport with just so many delays. And the gate agents, the customer service counter, we're just getting bombarded and we're getting, thrown notifications on our screens like they're trying so hard for technology to do everything, where people are just screaming, I just need someone to talk to that can help me, that can see me, that can do this. And I would envision 5 years from now where technology can handle a lot of it. And the humans that are on ground will be those empathetic voices, will
Yeah.
be those people that, in my book, we train people how to have that supportive conversation. How exactly do you have it? How do you display that empathy in a way that,
Hmm.
where even I will say there are a lot of people, they're having the worst day of their life. They can't tap into empathy. They need to be able to say, if I do these skills, I am being empathetic. And
Hmm.
so, those are the kind of things that I think that we have to find that balance. There are things that AI can do. AI
Hmm.
could have helped a lot of people yesterday, through all of these delays. And the people on the ground could have then just been good, compassionate voices to
Yeah.
say, hey, we're helping you through it. Whereas right now they're still bombarded with so many details. They don't have the capacity to do that. So everybody in the airport was frustrated yesterday.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that's kind of where I would envision it, hopefully going.
Hopefully, we can hope. We can hope. Well, this has been so great to finally connect with you and get your perspective live
I
on
know.
all of these things I see you post about in social media. I just want to remind people the name of the book is Lifting Up: The Transformative Power of Supportive Leadership. And this is a follow on to your book, Showing Up,
That's right.
which is great. So I hope folks will definitely check that out. We will have links to that in the show notes. As well as, can we get a link to your awkward zone assessment and put
No,
that in the
that is
show
something
notes?
we do in workshops.
Oh,
However,
never mind. That's
people
something
can
we
reach
do in
out.
workshops. So you're going to have to contact her. But we will put all your links in the show notes. But for anyone that's listening to us on the go, where's the best place they can find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, probably the best place, Maria, is showingup.com, but it's showing-up.com, or follow me on LinkedIn at Jen Marr.
I love it. And my PSA always for LinkedIn is make sure you tell her that you heard her on this show so she doesn't think you're trying to sell her something. Yeah, I love it. I have a hyphen website too, red dash slice. So I feel you that showing dash up, showing hyphen up.com. Jen, thank you so very much for your time and your insights. And I hope we stay in touch.
Absolutely, we will. We got a lot of work to do,
We
Maria.
do. We got a lot of work to do. And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Empathy Edge podcast. If you like what you heard, you know what to do. Please rate, review, and share it with a friend or a colleague. And until next time, please remember that cash flow, creativity, and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Take care and be kind.